Hey, pushers, Mr. Imatsu here, coming with our next activity on the causes of Jacksonian democracy. Actually, a little bit of Jackson democracy himself. Actually, I'll be the next one. Um, the Jacksonian period, although he's not been elected according to our class yet, in our next assignment and video, we'll talk about his election. But he's just going to run for election and he's going to call some things out and he's going to change that actual campaign. A couple things just to talk about this guy, Andrew Jackson, who's on their $20 bill, on his importance. One thing is he kind of created this. We already had a two-party system, but it kind of cements a really two-party system on how you win. Remember, at this time there was actually only one party. It was the Republicans. The Democratic Republicans have now changed their name just to Republicans, kind of around Monroe-ish, and they're chilling. And what Andrew Jackson's going to do is he's going to turn his into the Democrats. Okay, so now it's going to be the Republicans and the Democrats, and those are the two parties we still have today. The Republicans are actually going to change their name one more time, probably to the Whigs. There's splinter off Republicans, and there's a little bit of chaos there. But definitely, when Abraham Lincoln comes, we have a Republican Party, we have a Democratic Party, and that will not change. Kind of just like we talked on last video, the founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, all the individuals at the Constitutional Convention, they had read in history, and I think they talked about this in Khan Academy, or maybe it's just me kind of remembering. They were concerned about democracy in a large country. They had kind of looked and found that democracies only have in small areas, and they were concerned probably as the United States began to expand and its population began to expand, what democracy would look like. And again, they were always fearful, especially Madison at certain levels and his Federalist parties of tyranny of a majority, right, oppressing a minority, right. So the 51% just imposing their will and passing laws without any concern of the 49%, and how that could cause division and separation. And we see it in the Civil War, and then definitely we're seeing those divisions, in my opinion, currently today. So we talked about the word franchise from our last video. Here it is again. We talked about property. So this is kind of I apologize. I kind of spoke a little bit more on the last video, more about kind of some of these questions. But, going into Andrew Jackson right here, one thing that is pretty interesting is, opponents called him a jackass. This race, suddenly we get this thing called mudslinging, where you have these negative ads about people, right? They don't have ads during that time, but they have pamphlets, right? And the lecture is going to go into a couple of the mudslinging events that they kind of went through in our next event. But anyways, one of them called jackass, and he says, okay, fine, I am a jackass. And he says, because I'm, stubborn and I'm hardworking and I'm a man of the people. I'm not some elitist horse, right? I'm a hard worker, gets his hands dirty, Southern farmer, not educated, not part of this Federalist elite that you guys have. So anyways, I don't want to go into that. Just as a heads up, pretty interesting, Donald Trump, he signed, into law. Well, you can change the Oval Office to whatever you want. And inside the Oval Office, he has a picture of Andrew Jackson. He changed a portrait over, and at certain levels, there's a lot of traits that they both carry. They're both populist. They both kind of go to their base, in this case, he's going to his Republican base for what they represent, which is kind of like, stopping of immigration, limiting of immigration, at least, all the different views that he exposes. Well, Andrew Jackson does the same. He does everything for his farmers, right? You're going to notice the Supreme Court tells him that he cannot wage war against the Native Americans, or can't do things against Native Americans, and has to treat them as like a separate country. And he says, watch me do it, and let's see them enforce their court cases. They basically don't have an army. I do. So I'm really interesting things that Andrew Jackson does and what he's known for, as you guys go through. One thing that they go into well, and I love this picture that they have for Khan Academy, which is the corrupt bargain. But basically, at this time, if you guys don't know what remember that our Congress has two parts. There's the Senate, where it's 2 per state, and the House of Representatives, done by population. Each has their leader. There's a majority leader in the Senate, and then there's actually a Speaker of the House. The president of the Senate is usually the vice president. He sits there. Usually they have somebody sit in for him. I think that's how the rules were. But there is the leader of the state is called the Speaker of the House, and the Speaker of the House is Henry Clay. And what happens to this electoral college, which has been true of a lot of actually Democratic losses, Hillary Clinton and Al Gore both won the popular vote but lost the electoral vote. And this happens in this case with John Quincy Adams being a kind of Republican of the Thomas Jefferson and this Andrew Jackson bringing in a new idea. He's going to change after this to the Democrats. But he wins the popular vote. There's basically a three-way fight between who wants to become president with only one party, right? There's only one party at this time. But he wins the popular vote. He wins the electoral vote, and it goes to the Speaker of the House. And the Speaker of the House, which is Henry Clay, talks to John Quincy Adams because they both do not like Andrew Jackson, and they basically make a deal. And this is called the corrupt bargain. And the House votes for John Quincy Adams to become president. He becomes president, and right when he becomes president, he becomes the Secretary of State, which is a pretty powerful position. It's a guy that goes all over the world and speaks on the behalf of the United States and the president. One thing that is passed during this time is called the Tariff Abominations. And the Tariff of Abominations, just to get back here, guys, actually, I want to show you guys this first. What a tariff is, if you guys, a tariff is a tax, but only on foreign goods. So what it was is anything that came over here from England or Europe, and when it come over here, if you wanted to buy it, you had to buy it plus a tax. Obviously, it's making things from England and Europe more expensive. And what the idea of a tax is, and this is what we actually did with China, is to encourage people not to buy European or English things, or in our case, Chinese things, but to buy things in America, to keep the money and the economy going here in the United States. I really like this slide. I just kind of Googled it, and I really like this view. So, from the northern perspective, this is awesome. Foreign goods like the stuff from France and England and Europe are more expensive. People are going to buy our stuff. I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm the one that's making the finished good. I'm the one that has the market revolution up here. I have the factories and, the system going down. But from the southern perspective, which is again pretty cool, what? The foreign goods are made more expensive and people buy more U.S. goods. So guess what? They're going to buy, the economy down here is going to suffer because they're buying less cotton. We're not sending our cotton out because Europeans aren't going to buy our stuff. So they kind of saw that the tariff was only really supporting the North because, again, some of the European countries said, fine, you're not going to buy our stuff. Fine, we're not going to buy things of yours, such as Southern cotton. And also, the manufactured goods were more expensive than the stuff from Europe. So now, look at the southern states, right? The southern states are not producing factories. They're producing raw materials called cotton. They're bringing it back up to the north and their farm and their textile systems, and it's coming down and becoming a shirt and becoming more expensive. This sounds really kind of looks like mercantilism if you guys think about it, right? Britain had all the factories. The United States and colonies were supposed to supply the raw materials, and that unequal relationship, right, of less expensive compared to more expensive and being traded back and forth kept the, Britain wealthy. Well, in this case, it looks like Northeast is consistently getting wealthy at the cost of the Southerners. So they call it not the tariff, a protective tariff, but they call it the tariff of abominations. And abominations means a horrible, horrible thing. And the vice president of Andrew Jackson at that time, John C. Calhoun, is going to say, this is unbelievable. We can't do these things. And basically, there is a tariff, that they have to do. And they say, fine, we're not going to actually enforce the tariff in our ports. Right? We'll actually nullify the law. And this is kind of a hard thing to this is kind of an insane thing to do because basically you're saying the states have more power than the federal government, right? And the Constitution is clearly saying that we need to give some power to the federal government. So there's going to be a fight about this, right? There's going to be a trying to figure out what the role of states are. And I'm going to let you know this is going to be a little step towards a civil war as states say, it's okay for us to do whatever the heck we want. And you're going to have a president goes, no, you can't do whatever the heck you want. We are part of the United States and we need to do this together. So this beginning of states' rights and the idea that we can override federal law, we can override the Constitution. Let's bring this to Supreme Court and see what it actually is. It's beginning to take place, and it's beginning to take place in the South, in Southern Carolina, and it's because of the actions they believe of the North. So a little bit more getting tricky into this history regarding economics and politics, but there it is, the tariff of abominations. All right, guys. So a little introduction to Andrew Jackson. Interesting character in American history. Interesting part of history. The parallels that it has today, the similar things that we're experiencing today as they are experiencing them are just—it's so dramatic. It's crazy, and that was over 150 years ago. So well over 150 years ago, almost 200 years ago now. Hopefully you can see the excitement in my voice, and hopefully you enjoy the learning and trying to see how this relates to the things that we're going through right now. All right, guys, take care. Later, pushers.